Victoria Pemberton's voice
Security!
slices through
I
the
need security
first-class
right
lounge
now!
at Atlanta International Airport like a siren at midnight. Every conversation stops. Every head turns. Every eye focuses on the perfectly manicured finger she's pointing at the 18-year-old black teenager sitting quietly by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The teenager looks up from his laptop, his noise-canceling headphones sliding down around his neck. His voice is calm, measured, polite. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" Problem, Victoria's laugh is sharp enough to cut glass. The problem is that boy is impersonating a passenger. I know fraud when I see it. The teenager's name is Marcus Rivera, though Victoria doesn't bother to learn it. At 18, he's the youngest person ever accepted into Oxford University's Artificial Intelligence Ethics program. The laptop balanced on his knees contains algorithms worth more than Victoria's annual salary. The scholarship letter tucked in his backpack represents 4 years of full tuition, room and board at one of the world's most prestigious universities. But Victoria Pemberton sees none of that. She sees a black teenager in a dark hoodie, and her mind fills in the blanks with prejudice. Flight 287 to London is for legitimate travellers. Victoria announces her voice carrying across the marble-floored lounge. The McDonald's is downstairs. What Victoria Pemberton doesn't know is that in exactly 34 minutes, those words will end her career, destroy her marriage, and make her the most hated woman on the internet. Marcus closes his laptop slowly. His movements are deliberate, controlled. He's been here before, not literally, but figuratively. The looks, the assumptions, the casual cruelty wrapped in civility. At 18, he's already developed the armor that young black men learn to wear in spaces where they're not welcome. "I'm waiting for my flight to London," Marcus says, his voice still steady. "Same as everyone else here." Victoria's eyes narrow. She's 52 years old, Senior Vice President of Strategic Acquisitions at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, and she's flying to London for what could be the biggest deal of her career, a $500 million acquisition that will cement her legacy in the pharmaceutical industry. She's wearing a $3,000 Chanel suit, carrying a $2,000 Hermes bag, and sporting a diamond tennis bracelet that cost more than most people's cars. In her world, appearance equals worth. Status equals validity, and Marcus Rivera in his hoodie and jeans doesn't fit her equation. Isabella Victoria calls out, striding toward the gate desk with the confidence of someone accustomed to having her problems solved by others. "Isabella, we have a security breach. Isabella." Martinez, 28 years old and 6 months into her job as a gate agent for Meridian Air, looks up from her computer screen. She's seen this before too, though not as blatantly as this. The entitled passenger, the uncomfortable assumptions, the young person of color who suddenly finds themselves under scrutiny for the crime of existing in a space deemed too good for them. "What can I help you with, Ms. Pemberton?" Isabella's voice is professional, but there's steel underneath the politeness. Victoria gestures dramatically toward Marcus. "That boy is sitting in the first-class lounge without authorization. He's clearly not a passenger. I need him removed immediately." Isabella glances at Marcus, who has reopened his laptop and is typing quietly. He hasn't moved from his seat. He hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't done anything except exist in a space where Victoria has decided he doesn't belong. So Isabella calls out gently, "Could I see your boarding pass, please?" Marcus reaches into his backpack, pulls out a folder, and walks over to the desk. As he moves, Victoria studies him like a predator evaluating prey. She notices the expensive sneakers, limited edition. Jordan's worth $800, though she wouldn't recognize them as such. She sees the laptop bag, genuine leather, worn but well made. She observes the watch partially hidden by his sleeve, a Patek Philippe, inherited from his grandfather, worth more than her car payment. But Victoria sees none of the value. She sees only what her prejudice allows her to see. Marcus hands Isabella his boarding pass along with several documents. Isabella scans them quickly, her eyebrows rising slightly. She looks at Marcus, then at Victoria, then back at the documents. "Mr. Rivera," she says clearly, "you're confirmed in Seat 2A, first-class service to London Heathrow. Full fare paid in advance." She turns to Victoria. "Miss Pemberton is there. Anything else I can help you with?" Victoria's face flushes red. "That's impossible. Look at him. Anyone can forge documents these days." "I demand you verify those papers." Ma'am Isabella replies, "Mr. Rivera's documents are legitimate. He's an invited guest of Oxford University. His travel arrangements were made through their official channels." From across the lounge, James Patterson looks up from his own laptop. He's 45 years old, a technology investor with 2.3 million followers on LinkedIn, and he's been watching this interaction with growing discomfort. James has an adopted son from foster care, a brilliant black teenager who's now studying computer science at MIT. He recognizes the dynamic playing out in front of him, and it makes his blood boil. James quietly opens his LinkedIn app and starts a live stream. This is James Patterson broadcasting live from the Meridian Air first-class lounge at Atlanta International. He says into his phone, his voice low but clear, "I'm witnessing something disturbing, and I think people need to see this." Victoria continues her assault on Marcus's legitimacy. "I know his type," she says loudly enough for the entire lounge to hear. "They come in here with fake papers hoping no one checks. They think they can just take what doesn't belong to them." Marcus pulls another document from his folder. It's a letter on official Oxford University letterhead personally signed by the Dean of the AI Ethics Program. It explains that Marcus is the youngest student ever accepted into their program, that he's been awarded a full scholarship based on his groundbreaking work in artificial intelligence bias detection, and that the university is honored to welcome him to their academic community. Isabella reads the letter, her eyes widening. She looks at Marcus with new respect, then turns to Victoria with barely concealed disgust. "Ms. Pemberton Isabella," says her voice now carrying an edge, "Mr. Rivera is a Rhodes Scholar nominee. His documentation is not only legitimate, it's exceptional." Victoria snatches the letter from Isabella's hands, scanning it quickly. Her face goes through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally a desperate attempt to maintain her position. "Anyone can print fancy letterhead," she declares, waving the document in the air. "This proves nothing. I've seen this scam before. These people come in here with elaborate stories, fake credentials hoping to intimidate us into giving them what they want." "These people," Isabella repeats, her voice dangerously quiet. Victoria doesn't notice the warning in Isabella's tone. She's too caught up in her own righteousness, too convinced of her own superiority to recognize how deep a hole she's digging. "You know exactly what I mean," Victoria continues. "I've worked hard for 30 years to earn the right to fly first class. I've paid my dues. I've earned my status. I refuse to have that cheapened by charity cases and affirmative action beneficiaries who think they deserve what I've worked for." The lounge falls silent. Even the background chatter from the bar stops. Every person in the space is now staring at Victoria, and the looks on their faces range from shock to disgust to embarrassment on her behalf. James Patterson's live stream viewer count jumps from 47 to 347 to 1 247 in a matter of seconds. Comments start flooding in. "Who is this woman? This is disgusting. Someone identify her. #airline racism." Marcus stands quietly through Victoria's tirade. His hands are steady, his breathing controlled, his expression neutral. He's learned not to react to people like Victoria, not because he doesn't feel the sting of her words, but because he knows that any response will be used as evidence of the very stereotypes she's trying to project onto him. "Ma'am," Marcus says finally, his voice carrying across the now silent lounge, "I understand you're concerned about legitimacy. Would you like to call Oxford University directly? I can provide you with the dean's personal number." Victoria stares at him, momentarily speechless. She wasn't expecting this level of calm professionalism from someone she's been treating like a criminal. That's not the point, she stammers. The point is that this lounge has standards. There are protocols. There are people who belong here and people who don't. And you've decided I don't belong. Marcus asks, his tone still polite, but now carrying a hint of steel. Look at yourself, Victoria says, gesturing at his clothing. Look at how you're dressed. This isn't a community center. This isn't a youth program. This is a space for professionals, for people who understand how to conduct themselves in elite environments. Isabella steps forward. Miss Pemberton, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're disturbing other passengers? I'm disturbing other passengers. Victoria's voice rises even higher. That boy is the one who doesn't belong here. That boy is the disturbance. James Patterson's viewer count hits 3. 247. He zooms in on Victoria's face as she points at Marcus, capturing every detail of her expression, every word of her tirade. Ma'am, Marcus says, reaching into his backpack again. Perhaps this will help clarify things. He pulls out another document, this one bearing the seal of the United States Department of Education. It's a letter congratulating him on receiving a presidential scholarship awarded to only 20 high school students nationwide each year. The letter is signed by the Secretary of Education and includes a personal note about Marcus's exceptional contributions to artificial intelligence research and his potential to shape the future of ethical technology. Isabella reads the letter, her jaw dropping slightly. She looks at Marcus with something approaching awe. Mr. Rivera, she says softly. I had no idea. This is incredible. Victoria grabs the letter, scanning it frantically. Her face goes through another series of expressions. Confusion, fear, anger, and finally desperate denial. Fake, she declares, though her voice lacks conviction. All fake. Anyone with a computer can make official-looking documents these days. Ma'am Isabella says these documents include verification codes. I can call the Department of Education right now to confirm their authenticity. Don't bother, Victoria snaps. I know what I'm looking at. I know a con artist when I see one, and I know that boy doesn't belong in first class. Marcus folds the documents carefully and returns them to his backpack. He looks at Victoria with something that might be pity. Ms. Pemberton, he says quietly, I'm sorry you feel that way. I hope your flight to London is pleasant. He turns to walk back to his seat, but Victoria isn't finished. Don't you walk away from me, boy, she shouts loud enough to make several passengers jump. Don't you dare turn your back on me. The entire lounge is now staring. James Patterson's live stream has over 5,000 viewers, and the comments are coming in too fast to read. Someone in the chat has identified Victoria by name, and hashtag Victoria Pemberton is starting to trend on social media. Marcus stops and turns around. For the first time since this confrontation began, there's a flash of something harder in his eyes. My name, he says, his voice still controlled, but now carrying unmistakable authority, is Marcus Rivera. Not boy. Not that kid. Not these people. My name is Marcus Rivera, and I'm traveling to Oxford University to begin my graduate studies in artificial intelligence ethics. Victoria stares at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Now Marcus continues. If you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. He walks back to his seat, sits down, and reopens his laptop. The screen displays lines of code that would be incomprehensible to most people, but revolutionary to those who understand artificial intelligence. He's working on an algorithm designed to detect and prevent exactly the kind of bias Victoria has just displayed. The irony is lost on Victoria, but it won't be lost on the world once this story goes viral. Victoria stands in the middle of the lounge, suddenly aware that every eye is on her. The silence is deafening. Even the air conditioning seems louder in the absence of conversation. Well, she announces to no one in particular. I guess we'll see what happens when we get on that plane. She doesn't know it yet, but she's just delivered her own prophecy. They will indeed see what happens when they get on that plane. And it will be the last flight Victoria Pemberton ever takes in first class. The boarding announcement crackles over the intercom. Meridian Air Flight 287 to London Heathrow. We're now beginning boarding for our Diamond Elite members and first-class passengers. Marcus closes his laptop shoulders, his backpack, and stands up. As he walks toward the gate, several other passengers nod at him respectfully. The elderly gentleman who witnessed the entire confrontation gives him an encouraging smile. A young Latina woman whispers, "Good luck at Oxford." Victoria gathers her belongings, her movements sharp and angry. She's the senior vice president of a major pharmaceutical company. She's flying to London for a deal that could define her career. She has power-influence connections, but as she walks toward the gate, she has no idea that she's about to encounter someone with more power than she's ever imagined. Someone whose quiet dignity will expose her ugliness to the world. Someone who will teach her that true strength doesn't come from putting others down, but from lifting them up. The gate agent scans Marcus's boarding pass. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Rivera. Have a wonderful flight." Victoria steps up behind him. "I'll be keeping an eye on him," she announces to the gate agent. "Just in case." The gate agent looks at her with barely concealed disgust, but says nothing. Professional courtesy has its limits, but it hasn't reached them yet. As they walk down the jet bridge toward Flight 287, neither Marcus nor Victoria knows that this flight will change both their lives forever. One will rise to heights he never imagined. The other will fall from grace so spectacularly that her name will become synonymous with everything wrong with privilege and prejudice. The Boeing 777 sits on the tarmac ready to carry them toward their destinies. The first-class cabin of Meridian Air Flight 287 is a sanctuary of soft lighting and whispered conversations. 8 suites arranged in a 2-to-2 configuration. Each one a private cocoon of leather and luxury. The air smells of fresh flowers and expensive cologne. Flight attendants move with practiced grace, offering champagne and warm towels to passengers settling in for the 7-hour journey to London. Marcus Rivera walks down the narrow aisle, checking his boarding pass one more time. Seat 2A, window seat left side. As he approaches his row, he notices the passenger already seated in 2B, Victoria Pemberton, still seething from their encounter in the lounge. But before we witness what happens next, we need to understand how these two people arrived at this moment. Their stories began long before they ever shared the same airspace. The Apple Store in Buckhead. Atlanta's most affluent shopping district buzzes with the quiet efficiency of expensive technology. Customers browse the latest devices, while blue-shirted employees offer assistance with practiced smiles. It's a Saturday afternoon, and the store is filled with families buying iPads for their children and professionals upgrading their MacBooks. 14-year-old Marcus Rivera walks through the glass doors, his acceptance letter for Apple's exclusive Young Developers Workshop clutched in his sweaty palm. He's wearing his best clothes, khakis his mother ironed that morning, and a button-down shirt that still smells like the discount store where they bought it. His sneakers are clean but worn. His backpack is patched but functional. He's one of only 12 high school students in Georgia selected for this program. His application essay about using AI to detect bias in hiring algorithms impressed the selection committee so much they waived the usual age requirement. At 14, he'll be the youngest participant in the workshop's history. Marcus approaches the information desk where a young employee with perfectly styled hair and a practiced smile looks him up and down before asking, "Can I help you find someone? I'm here for the Young Developers Workshop." Marcus says, his voice barely above a whisper. Despite his intellectual confidence, he feels out of place in this gleaming temple to technology and wealth. The employee's smile falters slightly. The workshop. Are you sure you're in the right place? Yes, sir. I have my acceptance letter. Marcus unfolds the document, his hands trembling slightly. The employee glances at the letter but doesn't really read it. Instead, he looks around the store, then back at Marcus. This workshop is pretty competitive. Are you sure this isn't for your brother or something? Maybe an older sibling. Heat rises in Marcus's cheeks. No, sir. It's for me. Marcus Rivera. I can show you my ID. Look, kid, the employee says, lowering his voice. This workshop is for serious developers. These are high school students who already know advanced programming languages. Maybe you're thinking of the basic computer literacy class at the community center. From across the store, Sarah Mitchell watches this interaction with growing unease. She's taking a break from her flight attendant schedule to shop for a new laptop, and she recognizes the look on Marcus's face. It's the same expression her younger brother wore when kids at school told him he wasn't smart enough for honors classes. Excuse me, Sarah interjects, walking over to the desk. Is there a problem? The employee turns to her with relief, clearly more comfortable dealing with the well-dressed white woman. I'm just trying to help this young man find the right program for his skill level. Sarah looks at Marcus, who's now staring at the floor, his acceptance letter hanging limply in his hand. What program are you here for, sweetheart? The Young Developers Workshop, Marcus whispers. Sarah takes the letter from his hand and reads it carefully. Her eyebrows rise as she takes in the details. Youngest applicant ever accepted full scholarship, provided personal recommendation from his computer science teacher, who called his work extraordinary. This is incredible, Sarah says, looking at Marcus with genuine admiration. You developed an AI algorithm at 14. That's amazing. The Apple employee shifts uncomfortably. I just thought, he looks like a brilliant young developer who belongs in this workshop, Sarah says firmly, which is exactly what this letter says he is. She turns to Marcus. Honey, don't ever let anyone make you doubt what you've earned. You're here because you're exceptional, not because of charity or luck. You earned this. Marcus looks up at her, tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. Thank you, Mom. Sarah, she says, extending her hand. And you're going to do amazing things, Marcus, I can tell. That night, Marcus sits at the desk in his small bedroom, the acceptance letter pinned to the wall above his computer. His mother, Elena, works 2 jobs to keep their small apartment, and his father isn't in the picture. The computer was bought with money Marcus earned tutoring younger kids in math after school. He opens his laptop and begins typing. Not homework, not games, but code. Lines and lines of complex algorithms flowing from his mind to the screen with an ease that would amaze professional developers twice his age. He's working on something he calls the Fairness Protocol, an AI algorithm designed to detect bias in decision-making processes. If AI is going to shape the future, he writes in his developer journal, then we need to teach it to be fair. We need to build programs that see ability, not appearance, that recognize talent, not privilege. As he types, Marcus makes a promise to himself. Never again will he let someone else's assumptions define his worth. Never again will he doubt his right to be in spaces where his mind, not his appearance, should determine his welcome. Victoria Thornton, not yet. Pemberton sits in the HR office of Patterson & Associates, a mid-level pharmaceutical consulting firm in downtown Atlanta. She's 25 years old, fresh out of business school with an MBA that cost her parents $200,000, and she's interviewing for a junior analyst position that pays $45,000 a year. The woman across from her, Helen Patterson, is the company's founder and a legend in the pharmaceutical industry. She built Patterson & Associates from a one-woman operation into a firm that advises Fortune 500 companies on drug development and market strategy. Your grades are excellent, Helen says, reviewing Victoria's transcript. Top 10% of your class, solid internship experience. Why pharmaceuticals? Victoria straightens her already perfect posture. She's wearing a conservative navy suit, modest jewelry, and the kind of practiced smile that conveys competence without threatening anyone's authority. I believe in the power of business to improve lives. Victoria recites the words polished from thousands of practice sessions in front of her mirror. The pharmaceutical industry sits at the intersection of science and commerce, and I want to be part of bringing life-saving treatments to market. It's a good answer, well-rehearsed and appropriately idealistic. What Victoria doesn't say is that she chose pharmaceuticals because her father's golf buddy told her it was a recession-proof industry where smart people could make serious money. Helen nods approvingly. And what do you see as the biggest challenge facing our industry? Regulation. Victoria answers without hesitation. Too much government interference in private enterprise. We need to streamline the approval process and reduce the bureaucratic burden that prevents innovation. This answer is less rehearsed but more honest. Victoria genuinely believes that business operates most efficiently when left alone by government oversight. In her worldview, successful people succeed because they deserve to, and unsuccessful people fail because they haven't worked hard enough. Interesting perspective, Helen says. What about access? The fact that life-saving treatments often cost more than most people can afford, Victoria pauses momentarily, caught off guard. This wasn't a question she prepared for. Well, she says carefully, I think that's why we need more competition in the marketplace. When companies compete, prices naturally come down, and there are assistance programs for people who really need help. Helen makes a note on Victoria's file. People who really need help. You know, Victoria continues, feeling more confident now, people who are legitimately struggling despite their best efforts. Not people who expect handouts or who haven't made responsible choices about their lives. It's a glimpse into the philosophy that will guide Victoria's career, the belief that success is earned and failure is deserved, that the world is divided into people who work hard and people who make excuses, that privilege is simply the natural result of merit. Helen offers Victoria the job partly because of her credentials and partly because she recognizes a hunger in the young woman that reminds her of herself at that age. What Helen doesn't recognize is that Victoria's hunger isn't for achievement or impact. It's for status, for the security that comes with being unquestionably at the top of the hierarchy. Over the next 27 years, Victoria climbs the corporate ladder with ruthless efficiency. She moves from Patterson and Associates to increasingly larger firms, each jump accompanied by a salary increase and a better title. She marries Richard Pemberton, an investment banker from a prominent Atlanta family. Not for love, but for the social connections his name provides. She learns to navigate corporate politics with skill, to identify who has power and how to align herself with them. She becomes an expert at reading boardroom dynamics, at knowing when to speak and when to listen, at presenting herself as competent but not threatening, ambitious but not greedy. But somewhere along the way, Victoria begins to confuse her success with her worth. She starts to believe that her achievements make her inherently superior to people who haven't achieved as much. She develops a worldview where everyone is ranked according to their visible success, and those rankings determine who deserves respect, consideration, and basic human dignity. By the time she reaches senior vice president at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Victoria has internalized a dangerous equation: worth equals wealth, status equals substance, and appearance reveals character. She looks at a young black man in a hoodie and sees someone who hasn't earned the right to share her space, not because of anything he's done, but because of everything she assumes about him. James Patterson sits in seat 1A, reviewing quarterly investment reports on his tablet. At 45, he's built a successful technology investment firm that specializes in funding startups led by underrepresented entrepreneurs. His personal motivation comes from his son, David, whom he and his husband adopted from foster care 5 years ago. David was 8 when he came to live with them, a brilliant kid who'd been passed between foster homes because he was too smart and made adults uncomfortable with his questions. Now 13, David is thriving in advanced placement classes and dreams of studying computer science at MIT. James has seen the way people look at David when they're out together. The assumptions, the double takes, the slightly longer pauses when David speaks with vocabulary that doesn't match their expectations. He's learned to recognize bias not just as an abstract concept, but as a daily reality that affects people he loves. Sarah Mitchell, the lead flight attendant, checks her manifest one final time before passengers board. 12 years in commercial aviation have taught her to read people quickly and accurately. She can spot nervous flyers, potential problem passengers, and first-time international travelers within seconds of their boarding. She notices Marcus's name on the first-class list, along with a note from Preservation's VIP passenger Oxford University Travel Full Scholarship recipient. She makes a mental note to provide extra attention without being obvious about it. Young people flying alone, especially young people of color, sometimes face challenges that have nothing to do with their qualifications or destinations. Sarah has seen it before: the passenger who questions whether someone belongs in first class, the subtle looks, the whispered comments. It's not part of her job description to address bias, but it's become part of her moral responsibility. Captain Robert Hayes reviews the flight plan for the 3rd time, though he could fly the Atlanta to London route in his sleep. 26 years with Meridian Air former Navy pilot and a stickler for protocol and safety. He's also recently completed mandatory bias awareness training, implemented by the airline after several high-profile discrimination incidents made national news. The training taught him to recognize bias not just as overt racism, but as the subtle assumptions and microaggressions that can escalate into serious problems. More importantly, it taught him that as captain, he has both the authority and responsibility to address discrimination when he sees it. These 4 people, Marcus, Victoria, James, and Sarah, are about to collide in a way that will change all their lives. Marcus and Victoria will face each other across a narrow airplane aisle, their worldviews and backgrounds creating an inevitable friction. James will become a witness and catalyst, using his platform to shine a light on what unfolds. Sarah will find herself caught between company policy and human decency. And Captain Hayes will face a decision that goes beyond flying procedures, whether to stand up for what's right, even when it's complicated, even when it's easier to look the other way. Their stories have brought them to this moment, this flight, this confrontation that will echo far beyond the confines of an airplane cabin. The past has shaped them, but the next few hours will define them. Marcus reaches his row and pauses. Victoria is already settled in 2B. Her Hermes bag tucked carefully in the overhead compartment, her laptop open on the wide first-class armrest. She's sipping champagne from a crystal flute, scrolling through emails with the practiced efficiency of a corporate executive. When she sees Marcus approach seat 2A, her champagne flute freezes halfway to her lips. "You have got to be kidding me," she mutters loud enough for the first 3 rows to hear. Marcus places his backpack in the overhead bin with careful precision. He can feel Victoria's eyes burning into him, cataloguing every movement, every detail. He's learned to move deliberately in moments like this, to avoid any action that might be misinterpreted as threatening or suspicious. The first-class cabin has a different energy than the lounge. More intimate, more confined. 8 passengers instead of dozens. Nowhere to retreat, nowhere to escape. For the next 7 hours, they'll be locked in this metal tube together 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. Sarah Mitchell approaches with a warm smile and a hot towel. "Mr. Rivera. Welcome aboard. Congratulations on Oxford. I heard about your scholarship from our reservation notes." "Thank you," Marcus says, accepting the towel gratefully. "I'm still pinching myself." "A glass of champagne before we push back," Sarah asks. Just water, please. I want to stay clear-headed for tomorrow's interviews. Victoria's head snaps up from her laptop. Interviews, she says, with mock curiosity. What kind of interviews? Sarah hesitates, sensing the tension, but unsure how to navigate it. Mr. Rivera is beginning graduate studies at Oxford University. How nice, Victoria says, her tone dripping with false sweetness. And how exactly did you manage that athletic scholarship special program? Marcus settles into his seat, which transforms into a fully flat bed with the press of a button. The leather is buttery soft, the privacy screen is optional, and the window offers a perfect view of the Atlanta skyline. He's never flown first class before, but he doesn't want to appear overwhelmed by the luxury. Academic scholarship? He replies simply. AI ethics program. Victoria laughs, a sound like ice cracking. AI ethics, that's very trendy. Very contemporary. I suppose all the universities have these diversity initiatives now. The word diversity hangs in the air like a weapon. Marcus has heard it used this way before, spoken with just enough disdain to make it clear that the speaker considers diversity a lowering of standards rather than an expansion of perspectives. The program focuses on preventing algorithmic bias, Marcus explains, keeping his voice level. Making sure artificial intelligence programs treat all people fairly. How noble, Victoria says, returning to her laptop. I'm sure that's very important to your community. Sarah appears with Marcus's water and another champagne for Victoria. Ms. Pemberton, can I get you anything else before we push back? Actually, yes, Victoria says, closing her laptop with a decisive snap. I'd like to speak to the purser about the passenger manifest. I have some concerns about the vetting process. Sarah's smile remains professional, but Marcus notices the slight tightening around her eyes. The manifest is cleared by security and corporate Ms. Pemberton. Is there a specific issue? The issue, Victoria says, her voice rising just enough to carry to the neighboring seats, is that I paid a premium for comfort and safety. I don't feel safe sitting next to this. She gestures at Marcus without looking at him, as if he's an object rather than a person. Marcus's hands clench into fists in his lap, but his voice remains steady. Ma'am, I haven't done anything to make you feel unsafe. You haven't done anything yet, Victoria corrects. But I know your type. I know how these situations develop. First you're charming, then you're entitled, then you're aggressive when you don't get what you want. From seat 1A, James Patterson looks up from his tablet. He's been trying to ignore the conversation, hoping it would die down naturally, but Victoria's words make his blood run cold. He's heard this exact language before, these same coded phrases that transform prejudice into legitimate concerns. James quietly opens his LinkedIn app and starts a live stream. His profile shows 2.3 million followers built over years of sharing insights about technology investing and social justice in corporate America. This is James Patterson broadcasting live from Meridian Air Flight 287, he says into his phone. His voice low but clear. We're about to push back from Atlanta to London, and I'm witnessing something that I think people need to see. Victoria continues her assault on Marcus's presence, unaware that her words are being broadcast to thousands of viewers. I've worked in corporate America for 30 years, she announces. I know how to read people. I know when someone doesn't belong. And you've decided I don't belong? Marcus asks finally, turning to face her directly. For the first time since he sat down, Victoria looks directly at him. What she sees confuses her prejudiced expectations. Intelligent eyes, calm, demeanor, quiet confidence. This isn't the stereotype she's trying to project onto him, and that makes her even more frustrated. Look at yourself, she says, gesturing at his clothes. Look at how you're dressed. This isn't a basketball court. This isn't a community center. This is first-class service on an international flight. Marcus glances down at his outfit, dark jeans, button-down shirt under the hoodie, clean sneakers. Airport casual, perfectly appropriate for a long flight. He's seen other passengers dressed much more casually without attracting Victoria's attention. "I'm dressed for comfort during a 7-hour flight," he says. "Same as everyone else here." "Same as everyone else." Victoria's voice rises another octave. "Do you see anyone else wearing a hood? Do you see anyone else who looks like they just wandered in off the street?" The cabin has gone quiet. The elderly couple in row 1 has stopped their conversation. The business executive in 3A has paused his phone call. Everyone is listening now, watching this confrontation unfold. Sarah approaches with a forced smile. "Folks, we're about to push back from the gate. Can I ask everyone to settle in for departure? I'm not settling in anywhere until this situation is resolved," Victoria declares. "I demand to speak to the captain." "Ma'am, the captain is conducting pre-flight procedures. If there's a specific security concern, the specific concern is that I don't feel safe. That boy could be anyone. He could have anything in that backpack. And I'm not flying to London sitting next to a potential threat." James Patterson's live stream viewer count jumps from 1,247 to 3,7. Comments flood in faster than he can read them. "Who is this racist woman? Someone identify her. This is disgusting. #airline racism." "Ma'am?" Marcus says his patience finally showing strain. "I'm an 18-year-old college student traveling to begin my graduate studies. I'm not a threat to anyone. That's exactly what someone would say if they were a threat." Victoria responds, her logic twisted by prejudice. "I've seen the news. I know how these things escalate. First, you're the victim, then everyone else is racist for noticing obvious red flags." Sarah realizes that the situation is spiraling beyond her ability to manage. She excuses herself and heads toward the cockpit where Captain Hayes is completing his pre-flight checklist. "Captain, we have a situation in first class," she says quietly. "Passenger in 2B is making accusations about the passenger in 2A. No actual incidents, but she's demanding his removal based on appearance." Captain Hayes looks up from his instruments. At 51, he's seen almost everything aviation can throw at him, but passenger conflicts based on racial bias always make his stomach turn. The recent company training is fresh in his mind. Your aircraft, your rules, your responsibility. Accusations of what specifically? Nothing specific. Just that she doesn't feel safe sitting next to him. The young man hasn't done anything wrong. He's traveling to Oxford University on a scholarship. Hayes nods grimly. "I'll handle this personally. Keep the cabin calm." Back in first class, Victoria has escalated to documenting her complaints. She's taking photos of Marcus with her phone, muttering about evidence and documentation for security purposes. Marcus says, his voice still controlled, but now carrying a harder edge. "Please don't take pictures of me without permission. I'll take pictures of whatever threatens my safety." Victoria responds, snapping another photo. This is evidence of the airline's failure to properly vet passengers. James Patterson zooms in with his own camera, capturing Victoria's photography session. His viewer count has hit 8,964, and #Victoria Pemberton is starting to trend on Twitter. For those just joining, James narrates quietly. This woman has spent the last 20 minutes harassing a teenager who's done nothing but sit in his assigned seat. She's now taking unauthorized photos of him while claiming he's a threat. The irony isn't lost on James's viewers. Victoria is documenting Marcus as a potential threat, while she's the one engaging in threatening behavior. Marcus reaches for his water bottle, a simple movement to stay hydrated. But Victoria sees it differently. "Sarah," she calls out sharply. "Sarah, he's reaching for something." Every head in first class turns. Marcus freezes with his hand halfway to his water bottle, suddenly aware that this simple movement has been interpreted as threatening. "It's just water," he says quietly. "Water," Victoria repeats mockingly. It's always something innocent, isn't it? Water reaching for a book, adjusting a seatbelt. These people always have explanations. These people, Marcus repeats, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. For the first time since this confrontation began, Victoria seems to realize she's crossed a line. But instead of backing down, she doubles down. "Don't try to twist my words," she says defensively. "I'm talking about people who don't belong in first class. People who haven't earned the right to be here." "And how does one earn that right?" Marcus asks. "By working for it," Victoria responds immediately. "By building a career, by paying full price, by understanding how to behave in elite environments." "I see," Marcus says. "And you've determined that I haven't done those things based on what exactly?" Victoria gestures vaguely at him. "Based on everything. Your age, your appearance, your attitude. Based on the fact that you think you can just waltz into spaces like this without understanding the protocols." "What protocols have I violated?" Victoria falters for a moment. Marcus has been nothing but polite since boarding. He hasn't raised his voice, hasn't made demands, hasn't done anything that could remotely be considered inappropriate. "It's not about specific violations," she says finally. "It's about fit. It's about belonging. It's about respecting the standards that make first-class service possible." Captain Hayes emerges from the cockpit, his uniform crisp, his bearing commanding. Every conversation stops as he approaches row 2. At 51, with graying temples and steady eyes, he carries an authority that fills the cabin. "Good evening," he says, his voice calm but carrying the unmistakable tone of command. "I'm Captain Hayes. I understand there's a concern about passenger safety." Victoria straightens in her seat, finally feeling like she has an ally in authority. "Captain, thank you for coming. I've been trying to explain to your staff that there's been a security failure." This passenger, she points at Marcus, was not properly vetted. Captain Hayes looks at Marcus, taking in the young man's calm demeanor, his respectful posture, his obvious attempt to de-escalate the situation. Then he looks at Victoria, noting her aggressive stance, her raised voice, her phone still pointed at Marcus. "Mr. Rivera," the captain says, "has there been any kind of incident?" "No, sir," Marcus replies. "I've been sitting quietly preparing for my interviews tomorrow, interviews at Oxford University. I'm beginning graduate studies in their AI ethics program." Captain Hayes nods approvingly. "Congratulations. That's quite an achievement." Victoria interrupts. "Captain, with all due respect, anyone can claim to be going to Oxford. Where's the verification? Where's the proof that he belongs in first class, Ms. Pemberton?" Captain Hayes says, turning his attention to her, "Mr. Rivera's ticket was purchased through Oxford University's official travel arrangements. His documentation was verified at check-in. There are no security concerns regarding his presence on this aircraft. But look at him," Victoria exclaims, her carefully maintained corporate composure finally cracking. "Look at how he's dressed, look at his age. Does he look like someone who can afford first-class service?" Captain Hayes's expression hardens. In his 26 years of military and commercial aviation, he's learned to recognize bias masquerading as security concerns. "Ma'am," he says, his voice carrying a warning, "a passenger's appearance is not grounds for removal from an aircraft. If you have specific security concerns based on actual behavior, I'll address them. If your concerns are based on assumptions about what a passenger should look like, then we have nothing further to discuss." Victoria realizes she's losing control of the situation. The captain isn't validating her concerns. The flight attendants aren't removing Marcus. The other passengers are staring at her with obvious disapproval. But instead of backing down, Victoria makes the decision that will define the rest of her life. She reaches for her water bottle, the same simple movement Marcus made earlier. But in her hands, it becomes a weapon. "If you won't protect your passengers," she says, standing up and facing Marcus directly, "then I'll protect myself." She splashes her water directly at Marcus, soaking his laptop, his clothes, his scholarship documents. The cabin erupts. Sarah gasps. James Patterson's live stream explodes with comments. The elderly couple in row calls out in shock. Marcus sits motionless, water dripping from his face, his laptop screen dark, his Oxford University acceptance letter soaked and illegible. He doesn't speak. He doesn't retaliate. He doesn't even wipe the water from his eyes. He just sits there with quiet dignity while Victoria Pemberton's career ends in real time. Captain Hayes keys his radio. "This is Flight 287. We're returning to the gate immediately. We have a passenger assault in first class." Victoria stares at Marcus at the water she threw at the destruction she's caused. For the first time since this confrontation began, she seems to understand the magnitude of what she's done. But it's too late. The water that was meant to humiliate has become the catalyst for justice. And Marcus Rivera, sitting calmly in his soaked clothes, is about to become the most powerful person on the plane. The silence that follows Victoria's assault lasts exactly 3.7 seconds. But in the age of social media, 3.7 seconds is long enough for a world to change. James Patterson's live stream, which had been hovering around 8 to 964 viewers, suddenly explodes. 23, 847, 45, 392, 67, 293. The viewer count climbs like a rocket propelled by shares, retweets, and notifications cascading across social media platforms. Marcus sits perfectly still, water dripping from his hair onto his soaked shirt. His laptop screen is black, potentially ruined. His scholarship documents are soaked, the ink beginning to blur. But his expression remains calm, almost serene, as if he's achieved some kind of inner peace in this moment of public humiliation. "Oh my God!" Sarah breathes, staring at the devastation in row 2. "Oh my God, did you just— I defended myself," Victoria interrupts, but her voice lacks conviction. She's still holding the empty water bottle, her hand trembling slightly as the reality of what she's done begins to sink in. James Patterson's voice cuts through the chaos, steady and professional, despite the shock. "Ladies and gentlemen viewing this live stream, you've just witnessed an assault. This woman has physically attacked a teenager for the crime of existing in first class. The comments on James's stream are coming too fast for anyone to read. Someone call the police, get her name. Victoria Pemberton, racist, #water attack. This is insane. Arrest her now." Captain Hayes stands frozen for a moment, his military training warring with his disbelief. In 26 years of aviation, he's handled medical emergencies, mechanical failures, and terrorist threats. But he's never seen a passenger deliberately assault someone else with such calculated malice. "Ms. Pemberton," he says, his voice deadly quiet, "you have just committed assault and battery in federal airspace. You are under arrest." Under arrest, Victoria's voice rises to a shriek. "I was defending myself. He was threatening me. Everyone saw him threatening me." She looks around the cabin, desperately seeking validation from the other passengers. But every face stares back at her with disgust, horror, or pity. No one witnessed any threat from Marcus. They all saw her deliberate, unprovoked attack. "I didn't threaten anyone," Marcus says quietly, finally speaking. He reaches up to wipe water from his eyes, the movement careful and controlled. "I was just sitting here." "You were intimidating me," Victoria screams. "You were making me feel unsafe. That's a form of assault." The elderly woman in row 1 stands up, her voice shaking with anger. "Young lady, that boy hasn't said a word to you all flight except to be polite. You're the one who's been aggressive and threatening." Her husband nods emphatically. "We've been listening to you harass that poor child for 20 minutes. He's shown more class in his little finger than you've shown in your entire life." James Patterson adjusts his phone to capture the full scene, Marcus sitting calmly in his soaked clothes, Victoria standing with the empty water bottle, Captain Hayes reaching for his radio, Sarah staring in shock at the water damage. For those just joining this stream, James narrates, "We're watching the aftermath of what I can only describe as a hate crime. A woman attacked a college-bound teenager with water because she didn't think he belonged in first class. The viewer count hits 156,472. Hashtag Victoria Pemberton is trending on Twitter. Screenshots from the live stream are being shared across Instagram. TikTok users are creating reaction videos in real time." Victoria suddenly seems to realize that she's being filmed. She whirls toward James, her face contorted with rage. "Turn that off," she shrieks. "Turn that camera off right now." Ma'am, James replies calmly. "This is a public space and a public assault. The American people have a right to see what racism looks like in 2024. Racism?" Victoria's laugh is hysterical. "This has nothing to do with race. This is about standards. This is about safety. This is about maintaining the quality of service that first-class passengers deserve." "By attacking children?" the elderly woman asks incredulously. "He's not a child. He's a threat." Victoria shouts. "Look at him. Look at how he's dressed. Look at where he comes from. People like that don't belong here." The words hang in the air like a confession. Victoria has finally said what everyone knew. She was thinking, stripped away the pretense of safety concerns and vetting procedures to reveal the ugly prejudice underneath. Marcus stands up slowly, water still dripping from his clothes. For a moment, every person in the cabin tenses, unsure what will happen next. Victoria clutches her empty water bottle like a weapon ready to defend herself against whatever retaliation she imagines is coming. But Marcus simply reaches into his backpack and pulls out a towel. He hands it to Victoria. "Ms. Pemberton," he says quietly, "you missed some water on your hands." The gesture is so unexpected, so gracious, so fundamentally decent that it renders everyone speechless. Victoria stares at the towel, then at Marcus, unable to comprehend how someone she just attacked could offer her kindness. James Patterson's stream goes silent, except for the sound of his own breathing. The comments section explodes with praise for Marcus's grace under pressure, with viewers sharing stories of their own encounters with prejudice, with demands for Victoria's identification and prosecution. Captain Hayes keys his radio again. "Atlanta Control, this is Flight 287. We need immediate gate return and law enforcement response. We have a passenger assault in progress." "Flight 287, roger. Gate 12 is being cleared for your return. ETA." 6 minutes. Victoria suddenly seems to understand that this situation has spiraled far beyond her control. The captain is treating this as a serious crime. The other passengers are unified against her. The live stream has hundreds of thousands of viewers. Her attack on Marcus has become a public spectacle. "Captain." She says, her voice now pleading rather than demanding, "Surely we can handle this internally. I'm a senior vice president at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. I'm traveling to London for important business. This is all just a misunderstanding." "Ma'am," Captain Hayes replies, "you assaulted another passenger with witnesses and video documentation. This is a federal crime, and it will be handled by federal law enforcement. But I didn't mean I wasn't trying to. It was just water assault is assault," Hayes says firmly. "The type of liquid is irrelevant." Sarah approaches Marcus with a stack of clean towels and a first aid kit. "Mr. Rivera, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" Marcus accepts the towels gratefully. "I'm fine, thank you. Just wet." "Your laptop." "Electronics can be replaced," Marcus says, carefully dabbing water from his Oxford acceptance letter. "This, however, is irreplaceable." He holds up the document, the ink smeared but still legible. The official Oxford University seal is visible along with the words, "Youngest student ever accepted" and "full academic scholarship." Victoria stares at the letter reality finally crashing over her in waves. She didn't just attack a random teenager. She attacked a Rhodes Scholar nominee, a prodigy accepted to one of the world's most prestigious universities, someone whose intellectual achievements far exceed her own. "Oxford," she whispers. "You really are going to Oxford?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replies politely. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I have my final interview for the Rhodes Scholarship. Or at least I did before my documents got wet." The impact of her actions hits Victoria like a physical blow. She hasn't just humiliated herself in front of hundreds of thousands of strangers. She hasn't just committed a federal crime. She's potentially damaged the future of someone whose achievements dwarf her own. James Patterson's viewer count peaks at 287,439. The hashtag Watergate 2024 begins trending alongside Victoria Pemberton and Marcus Rivera. News outlets are starting to pick up the story. CNN, NBC, and Fox News have all dispatched reporters to Atlanta International Airport. Victoria's phone begins buzzing with notifications. Missed calls from her husband, her assistant, her boss. Text messages flooding in from colleagues who've seen the video. Her carefully constructed professional reputation is crumbling in real time. She checks her Twitter mentions and immediately regrets it. Thousands of people are calling for her resignation, her arrest, her complete social exit. Someone has already identified her company, her position, her home address. Her LinkedIn profile is being flooded with negative comments. "This can't be happening," she mutters, scrolling through the digital destruction of her life. "This can't be real." But it is real, and it's accelerating beyond her ability to control or contain. Marcus finishes drying himself off and carefully places his damaged documents back in his backpack. He sits down calmly, buckles his seatbelt, and opens a book, a thick volume on algorithmic ethics that somehow survived the water attack. "What are you doing?" Victoria asks, confused by his composure. Reading, Marcus replies without looking up. "I have interviews tomorrow, assuming we make our connection. I need to be prepared." "How can you just sit there reading?" Victoria's voice cracks with hysteria. "How can you be so calm?" Marcus looks up at her with something that might be compassion. "Miss Pemberton, anger would only hurt me. It wouldn't change what happened, and it wouldn't make this situation better for anyone. But I attacked you. I humiliated you. Aren't you angry?" Marcus considers this seriously. "I'm disappointed," he says finally. "I'm disappointed that you saw me as a threat instead of a person. I'm disappointed that my appearance triggered such fear and hatred in you. I'm disappointed that in 2024 we're still having conversations about who belongs where based on the color of their skin. I'm not racist," Victoria says desperately. "I have black friends. I support diversity initiatives at work. I voted for Obama." The classic defense sounds hollow even to her own ears, especially while she's standing in the wreckage of her racist assault. "Ms. Pemberton," Marcus says gently, "what you did to me tonight had nothing to do with diversity initiatives or voting records. It had to do with seeing a black teenager in a space you thought belonged only to people like you." The plane begins its taxi back to the gate. Through the windows, passengers can see police cars, news vans, and airport security vehicles gathered around Gate 12. The lights from their emergency vehicles paint the terminal in reds and blues. Victoria stares out the window at the circus waiting for her, and finally understands the magnitude of what she's unleashed. This isn't going away. This isn't a misunderstanding that can be cleared up with apologies and explanations. This is the defining moment of her life, captured on video and witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people. James Patterson addresses his viewers one final time before the plane reaches the gate. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to arrive at the gate where law enforcement is waiting. What you've witnessed tonight isn't just about one woman's prejudice. It's about the assumptions we make, the biases we carry, and the courage it takes to stand up for what's right." He turns the camera toward Marcus one last time. This young man's response to hatred with grace, his reaction to violence with dignity, is a lesson for all of us. This is what strength looks like. This is what character looks like. The plane comes to a stop. Captain Hayes announces over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've returned to the gate due to a passenger incident. Law enforcement will be boarding shortly. Please remain seated until they complete their investigation." Victoria Pemberton sits down heavily still, clutching her empty water bottle. In less than 30 minutes, she's gone from senior vice president to social media pariah to criminal defendant. Her life as she knew it is over. Marcus Rivera calmly closes his book and prepares to meet with the police. He knows they'll need his statement, his account of what happened. He's not looking forward to reliving the humiliation, but he understands that his testimony might prevent this from happening to someone else. The jet bridge connects with a thud that sounds like a gavel falling. Justice is about to board Flight 287. The jet bridge connects to Flight 287 with the metallic precision of a prison door closing. Through the aircraft windows, passengers can see the controlled chaos of law enforcement, airport security, and media personnel surrounding Gate 12. Red and blue lights flash rhythmically across the terminal's glass walls, painting the scene in urgent official colors. Captain Hayes unbuckles his harness and stands his movements deliberate and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Federal law enforcement will be boarding to investigate a passenger incident. Please remain seated and have your identification ready if requested." Victoria Pemberton sits frozen in seat 2B, still gripping the empty water bottle that has become evidence of her federal crime. Her phone continues buzzing with notifications. Missed calls, text messages, each one a small explosion in the digital demolition of her reputation. Her husband, Richard. "Victoria, what the hell is happening? Channel 5 just called asking for comment." Her assistant, Jessica, Ms. Pemberton, Meridian's CEO, wants to speak with you immediately. Something about a video. Her boss, Dr. Martin Cross. "Victoria, you need to call me right now. Do not speak to anyone else until we talk." But Victoria can't bring herself to answer any of them. How do you explain to your husband that you've become the face of corporate racism? How do you tell your assistant that you might not have a job to return to? How do you apologize to your boss for bringing international shame to the company? The aircraft door opens with a pneumatic hiss, and the first figures to board are FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez and Atlanta Police Detective Robert Thompson. They're followed by Airport Security Chief Jennifer Walsh and Meridian Airlines Crisis Management Coordinator David Kim. Special Agent Rodriguez, a 15-year veteran of federal law enforcement, surveys the first-class cabin with practiced eyes. She's investigated passenger incidents before, but the circumstances of this case, captured live on social media with hundreds of thousands of witnesses, make it unique in her experience. "Good evening," she announces, her voice carrying easily through the cabin. "I'm Special Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. We're here to investigate reports of passenger assault. I need everyone to remain calm and seated while we gather statements." She approaches row 2, where Marcus sits reading his book, as if waiting for law enforcement is a perfectly normal part of air travel. Victoria sits rigidly beside him, her corporate composure finally completely shattered. "Mr. Rivera." Agent Rodriguez asks gently. "I'm Agent Rodriguez. Are you the passenger who was assaulted?" Marcus closes his book and stands respectfully. "Yes, ma'am." "Marcus Rivera. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "No, ma'am. Just wet clothes and a damaged laptop." Agent Rodriguez notes Marcus's calm demeanor, his respectful language, his obvious attempt to de-escalate rather than inflame the situation. In her experience, assault victims often present with anger, fear, or distress. Marcus presents with dignity. "And you are?" she asks, turning to Victoria. Victoria Pemberton comes, the whispered reply. "Senior Vice President of Strategic Acquisitions, Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Ms. Pemberton, are you the passenger who threw water at Mr. Rivera?" Victoria's lawyer instincts kick in, the product of 3 decades in corporate environments where every word can become a liability. I need to speak to my attorney before making any statements." That's your right, Agent Rodriguez acknowledges. But I should inform you that the entire incident was broadcast live to approximately 287,000 viewers. We have extensive video documentation. James Patterson approaches from his seat in row 1, his phone still recording. Agent Rodriguez. I'm James Patterson. I streamed the entire incident live. The video is already going viral. Agent Rodriguez accepts James's phone, reviewing the footage with Detective Thompson. Even viewing it for the first time, the narrative is crystal clear. A professional woman targeting a polite teenager, escalating her accusations without provocation, finally assaulting him with water when her complaints failed to get him removed. Mr. Patterson, we'll need a copy of this footage for evidence. Already uploaded to the cloud, James replies. Multiple backup copies. This story isn't going away. Detective Thompson approaches Marcus. Son, can you walk me through what happened from your perspective? Marcus recounts the events with precise, factual language. He doesn't embellish Victoria's behavior or claim more injury than he suffered. He simply describes what happened, the accusations in the lounge, the escalating harassment on the plane, the moment Victoria threw water at him. And how did you respond to being attacked? Detective Thompson asks. I offered her a towel to dry her hands. Marcus replies. Detective Thompson pauses, certain he misheard. I'm sorry you did what I gave her a towel. She had water on her hands from throwing it at me. The detective exchanges glances with Agent Rodriguez. In 23 years of law enforcement, he's never heard an assault victim respond to their attacker with kindness. Why did you do that? He asks. Marcus considers the question seriously. Because anger would have made the situation worse. Because she seemed upset and embarrassed. Because that's how I was raised. Agent Rodriguez turns to the other passengers gathering their statements. The elderly couple in row 1 confirms that Victoria was the aggressor throughout. The businessman in 3A verifies that Marcus never raised his voice or made threatening gestures. Sarah Mitchell provides testimony about the escalating complaints and demands for removal. Captain Hayes approaches Agent Rodriguez with the aircraft's security footage. Agent, we have internal cameras that captured the entire incident. Clear audio and video of the assault. As the investigation proceeds, Airport Security Chief Jennifer Walsh boards the aircraft with several manila folders. She approaches Marcus with a respectful nod. Mr. Rivera, I'm Jennifer Walsh, Airport Operations Director. I want to personally apologize for what happened in our facility tonight. Thank you, Ms. Walsh, but this wasn't the airport's fault. Perhaps not directly, Jennifer acknowledges, but when something like this happens to a passenger of your caliber, it reflects poorly on all of us. Victoria looks up sharply. Passenger of his caliber. Jennifer turns to Victoria with barely concealed disgust. Miss Pemberton, are you aware of who you attacked tonight? Some college student, Victoria mutters. Jennifer opens one of her folders. Marcus Rivera, age 18, youngest student ever accepted to Oxford University's AI Ethics program. Recipient of the Presidential Scholar Award, the National Science Foundation's Young Innovator Grant, and nominee for the Rhodes Scholarship. Victoria's face goes white. Jennifer continues reading. Founder and CEO of Rivera Analytics, developer of the Fairness Protocol for Algorithmic Bias Detection. Currently valued at $2.8 billion following acquisition talks with major technology companies. The cabin falls silent, except for the hum of the aircraft's electrical programs. Impossible, Victoria whispers. Jennifer opens another folder. Microsoft Corporation completed acquisition paperwork this morning for Rivera Analytics. The deal was finalized while you were attacking Mr. Rivera. Detective Thompson looks at Marcus with new interest. Son, are you telling me you're a billionaire? As of this morning, yes, sir. Marcus replies quietly, though I'm still getting used to the idea myself. And you're 18 years old? Yes, sir. Victoria stands up shakily, staring at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. You're the Rivera Analytics acquisition. The AI bias detection company. Meridian Pharmaceuticals just approved integrating that technology into our hiring processes. Yes, ma'am, Marcus confirms. My algorithms are designed to prevent exactly the kind of bias you demonstrated tonight. The irony hits Victoria like a physical blow. She spent 30 minutes attacking the very person whose technology her company hired to solve their discrimination problems. She threw water at the teenager whose algorithms could have prevented her own biased behavior. The board meeting tomorrow, Victoria says, her voice hollow with realization. The London meeting I'm travelling to. It's about your acquisition. Yes, ma'am. I'm flying to London for the final integration meetings with Meridian Pharmaceuticals, Oxford University, and the European Union's AI Ethics Committee. Agent Rodriguez closes her notebook. Ms. Pemberton, you're under arrest for assault and battery federal crime aboard an aircraft and civil rights violations. You have the right to remain silent. As Agent Rodriguez reads Victoria her rights, the full scope of her destruction becomes clear. She didn't just attack a random teenager. She attacked the most valuable AI innovator of his generation, someone whose technology could revolutionize bias detection across industries, someone whose cooperation her own company depends on for their future growth. James Patterson's live stream, still running, captures Victoria's arrest with clinical precision. The viewer count has stabilized around 340,000, but the video has been shared millions of times across social media platforms. Hashtag Victoria Pemberton is trending worldwide. Victoria's phone, still buzzing with notifications, finally displays a call she can't ignore. Meridian Pharmaceuticals, so to Martin Cross. Agent Rodriguez allows her to answer under supervision. Victoria, Dr. Cross's voice is tight with controlled anger. Please tell me what I'm seeing on CNN right now isn't real. Martin, I can explain, Victoria. You attacked our most important strategic partner. You threw water at the teenager whose algorithms we just paid $2.8 billion to license. You humiliated our company in front of the entire world. I didn't know who he was. That's exactly the problem. Dr. Cross's voice rises. You attacked him because you didn't know who he was. You attacked him because of what he looked like. You attacked him because your prejudice is stronger than your judgment. The line goes quiet for a moment before Dr. Cross delivers the words that end Victoria's career. Victoria, you're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from company premises when you return. If you return. The call ends. Victoria stares at the dead phone, understanding that her professional life has just ended as abruptly and publicly as possible. Marcus approaches Victoria as Agent Rodriguez prepares to escort her from the aircraft. Miss Pemberton, Victoria looks up at him, tears streaming down her face. What I want you to know, that I won't be pressing for the maximum charges. I believe in redemption, and I believe people can change. Why, Victoria asks, her voice breaking. After what I did to you, why would you show me any mercy? Marcus considers this carefully, because responding to hatred with more hatred doesn't solve anything. Because you need to learn from this, not just be destroyed by it. Because the algorithms I design are based on the principle that people can overcome their biases if given the opportunity. Agent Rodriguez leads Victoria toward the aircraft exit, where cameras flash and reporters shout questions. As she passes Marcus one final time, Victoria stops. I'm sorry, she whispers. I'm genuinely sorry for what I did to you. Marcus nods. I believe you are. The question now is what you do with that remorse. Victoria is escorted from the aircraft into a media firestorm that will follow her for years. Her mugshot will be on the front page of newspapers worldwide. Her attack on Marcus will become a case study in corporate bias training programs. Her name will become synonymous with the dangers of unchecked prejudice in professional environments. But Marcus Rivera, The teenager she tried to humiliate will board another flight to London. He'll complete his Rhodes Scholarship interviews. He'll begin his studies at Oxford. And he'll continue developing technology that prevents other Victoria Pembertons from destroying careers and lives with their assumptions. The quiet dignity he showed in the face of her assault will inspire millions of people who see themselves in his situation. His grace under pressure will become a model for responding to prejudice with strength rather than bitterness. And the water she threw at him in anger will become the catalyst that transforms bias detection from theoretical algorithm to practical necessity implemented across industries worldwide to ensure that talent is recognized regardless of the package it comes in. Justice, as it turns out, can be served at room temperature. The media circus outside Flight 287 resembles a presidential arrival more than a routine police arrest. Satellite trucks from CNN, Fox News, NBC, ABC, and local Atlanta stations ring the terminal building. Reporters thrust microphones toward any passenger who emerges desperate for first-hand accounts of the viral water attack that has captivated the internet. Victoria Pemberton's perp walk becomes the lead story on every major news network within minutes of her emergence from the aircraft. Flanked by FBI Special Agent Rodriguez and Detective Thompson, she moves through the terminal in handcuffs. Her Chanel suit wrinkled, her perfect corporate composure completely shattered. Miss Pemberton. Miss Pemberton, reporters shout questions as camera flashes explode around her like lightning. Why did you attack the teenager? Do you have a statement? Are you a racist? Victoria keeps her head down, but the cameras capture every detail, the tears streaming down her cheeks, the trembling in her hands, the complete collapse of the confident executive who boarded the plane just hours earlier. Inside the aircraft, Marcus Rivera gathers his belongings methodically. His laptop is definitely ruined. The screen stays black despite multiple attempts to power it on. His Oxford University documents are damp but readable, the official seals slightly smeared but still recognizable. His clothes are still damp, clinging uncomfortably to his skin. Airport Operations Director Jennifer Walsh approaches him with a stack of paperwork and a concerned expression. Mr. Rivera, Meridian Airlines would like to offer you our complete assistance in resolving this situation. I appreciate that, Ms. Walsh. I mainly need to get to London for my interviews tomorrow. Already handled, Jennifer replies, consulting her tablet. We've rebooked you on our 11:30 p.m. departure, which arrives at Heathrow at 10:15 a.m. London time. First-class suite complimentary upgrade to our premium service. You'll have plenty of time to rest and prepare. Thank you. What about Ms. Pemberton? Jennifer's expression hardens. Ms. Pemberton will be spending the night in federal custody. Her travel plans are no longer our concern. James Patterson approaches, finally ending his live stream after nearly 2 hours of continuous broadcasting. Marcus, that was extraordinary. The way you handled yourself under pressure was incredible. I just tried to stay calm, Marcus replies. Getting angry wouldn't have helped anyone. Do you realize how many people watched what happened? My stream peaked at 340,000 concurrent viewers, but the clips are being shared millions of times across social media. You've become a symbol. Marcus seems uncomfortable with this attention. I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to get to Oxford and start my studies. Too late for that, James says gently. Your response to hatred with grace has inspired people all over the world. Check your mentions. Hashtag Marcus Rivera is trending globally. As if to prove his point, Marcus's phone buzzes with notification after notification. Messages from classmates, teachers, strangers offering support and admiration. Interview requests from major news networks. Speaking engagement offers from universities and corporations. But the message that matters most comes from Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, Dean of Oxford's AI Ethics Program. Marcus, we've seen the news. Your display of character under pressure confirms everything we believed about your potential. Take all the time you need. Your place here is secure. Meanwhile, in federal holding at Atlanta International Airport, Victoria Pemberton sits in a small, windowless room, her designer suit exchanged for a standard orange jumpsuit. The transformation from corporate executive to criminal defendant is complete and jarring. Her court-appointed lawyer, Michael Torres, reviews the charges with grim professionalism. Ms. Pemberton, you're facing federal assault charges, civil rights violations, and potential hate crime enhancements. The video evidence is overwhelming, and the victim's profile makes this a high-priority case. What does that mean for me? Victoria asks, her voice hollow. Best case scenario with a guilty plea and cooperation. 18 months, federal prison. Substantial fines, mandatory bias, counseling, and permanent criminal record. Worst case if you fight this and lose 5 to 7 years federal prison, career destruction, and complete social exile. Victoria stares at the concrete walls of her cell, trying to comprehend how her life imploded so completely in such a short time. This morning she was a senior vice president traveling to London for the deal of her career. Tonight she's a federal criminal whose face is plastered across international media as the embodiment of corporate racism. Her phone, returned to her during lawyer consultation, shows the digital destruction of her reputation in real time. Her LinkedIn profile is flooded with negative comments calling for her permanent ban from corporate America. Her personal social media accounts are being bombarded with angry messages from people who've seen the video. Most damaging of all, her professional network is publicly distancing themselves from her. Former colleagues are posting statements on LinkedIn denouncing her behavior. Business partners are announcing the termination of all contracts and relationships. Industry organizations are revoking her memberships. The Pharmaceutical Executive Women's Association. We condemn the behavior demonstrated by Victoria Pemberton and are removing her from all association leadership roles effective immediately. The Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, Victoria Pemberton's actions do not represent the values of our organization. Her membership has been revoked. The Georgia Business Ethics Council. Ms. Pemberton's conduct violates every principle our organization stands for. We are pursuing legal action to remove her from our advisory board. But the most devastating blow comes from her husband, Richard. His text message is brief and final. Victoria. I can't be associated with this. I've filed for divorce and moved out. Don't contact me. 32 years of marriage ended by a text message sent to a jail cell. Victoria's assistant, Jessica, reached by phone, delivers more catastrophic news. Ms. Pemberton Meridian's stock dropped 8% in after-hours trading. The board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to terminate your employment and revoke all benefits. They're also pursuing clawback provisions for your bonuses from the last 3 years. How much Victoria asks weekly? $2.4 million. They want it all back. And my retirement account. Frozen pending investigation. The SEC is looking into whether your actions constitute fiduciary breach. If they find that your racism damaged shareholder value, they could seize your entire portfolio. The financial destruction matches the social annihilation. Victoria's carefully constructed wealth, built over 3 decades of corporate climbing, is evaporating overnight. Her reputation, her relationships, her resources, all gone because she couldn't tolerate the presence of a black teenager in first class. At Meridian Pharmaceuticals headquarters, CEO Dr. Martin Cross holds an emergency press conference to address the Victoria Pemberton crisis. Standing before a room full of reporters, he attempts to contain the reputational damage to his company. Meridian Pharmaceuticals unequivocally condemns the behavior demonstrated by former Vice President Victoria Pemberton. Dr. Cross reads from a prepared statement. Her actions do not reflect the values of our organization or our 47,000 employees worldwide. Dr. Cross, a reporter, interrupts. Ms. Pemberton was in charge of your diversity and inclusion initiatives. How did someone with such obvious bias rise to senior leadership? Dr. Cross pauses, clearly uncomfortable. We are conducting a comprehensive review of our hiring and promotion practices to ensure this never happens again. Will you be implementing Mr. Rivera's bias detection algorithms in your corporate processes? We are accelerating the integration of Rivera Analytics technology across all our human resources functions. The irony that Ms. Pemberton attacked the very person whose algorithms could have prevented her own biased behavior is not lost on us. The press conference continues for 20 minutes with Dr. Cross repeatedly emphasizing Victoria's termination and the company's commitment to diversity. But the damage is done. Meridian's reputation is permanently linked to Victoria's assault, and the stock price continues to fall as investors flee the controversy. Back at the airport, Marcus Rivera finally boards the 11:30 p.m. flight to London. This time, his first-class experience is everything it should have been, the first time respectful service, comfortable accommodations, and fellow passengers who treat him with the courtesy every human being deserves. The lead flight attendant, Captain Patricia Williams, personally welcomes him aboard. Mr. Rivera, on behalf of Meridian Airlines, I want to apologize for what you experienced earlier. Your grace under pressure was extraordinary. Thank you, Captain Williams. I'm just glad it's over. It's not over, she says gently. What you did tonight, responding to hatred with dignity, that's going to inspire people for years to come. You've shown the world what true strength looks like. As Flight 289 pushes back from the gate, Marcus looks out of the window at the terminal where hours earlier he was accused of not belonging. The irony isn't lost on him. The woman who tried to have him removed is now sitting in a jail cell while he's traveling to Oxford to begin a journey that will shape the future of ethical artificial intelligence. His phone buzzes with a text message from his mother, Elena. Mijo, I saw the news. I'm so proud of how you handled yourself. You made your grandmother's memory proud tonight. Marcus smiles, thinking of his grandmother Rosa, who raised him to believe that dignity is something no one can take away from you, only something you can give away. Tonight, he kept his dignity while Victoria gave hers away. The plane rises into the night sky, carrying Marcus toward his destiny at Oxford. Below, Atlanta spreads out in a grid of lights, each one representing a life, a story, a possibility. Some of those lights belong to people who saw his video and felt inspired to stand up for others. Some belong to people who recognized their own biases and committed to doing better. And some belong to people like Victoria Pemberton, sitting in the darkness of a federal holding cell, learning that hatred is a poison you drink yourself while hoping it hurts someone else. The immediate consequences are clear. Victoria's career is over. Her reputation destroyed, her future uncertain. Marcus's journey is just beginning, his potential unlimited, his impact on the world already expanding. But the deeper consequences, the conversations sparked, the policies changed, the hearts opened. Those will ripple outward for years to come like waves from a stone thrown into still water. Sometimes justice is swift, decisive, and served at 35,000 feet. The United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia feels different from an airplane cabin, but the fundamental dynamic remains the same. Marcus Rivera sitting with quiet dignity, while Victoria Pemberton faces the consequences of her choices. Judge Elena Martinez, a Reagan appointee known for her fairness and firm sentencing, reviews the case file one final time before addressing the packed courtroom. Media representatives fill the gallery documenting the resolution of what has become known as the Watergate incident, though most coverage now focuses on Marcus's remarkable response rather than Victoria's assault. Victoria looks nothing like the polished executive who boarded Flight 287 6 months ago. Her hair is no longer perfectly styled, her clothes are off the rack rather than designer, and her eyes carry the hollow look of someone who has lost everything she once thought defined her worth. Ms. Pemberton. Judge Martinez begins, "You have pled guilty to federal assault charges and civil rights violations. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say to the court?" Victoria rises slowly, her hands trembling as she unfolds a handwritten statement. "Your Honor, 6 months ago I committed an act that still horrifies me when I replay it in my mind. I attacked an innocent young man because my prejudices convinced me he didn't belong in the same space as me." Her voice cracks slightly, but she continues, "I want to be clear, I am not the victim here. Marcus Rivera is the victim. Every person who has ever been judged by their appearance rather than their character is the victim. I am simply someone who must live with the consequences of choosing hatred over understanding." Judge Martinez nods approvingly. "Mr. Rivera, as the victim, in this case you have the right to address the court. Would you like to make a statement?" Marcus stands now, 19 years old and halfway through his first year at Oxford. His studies in AI ethics have been groundbreaking. His algorithms are being implemented globally, and his net worth has grown to nearly $4 billion following additional acquisitions and licensing deals. But none of that success is evident in his demeanor as he faces the woman who attacked him. He speaks with the same quiet grace he demonstrated that night on the airplane. "Your Honor, I don't want to see Ms. Pemberton's life destroyed. I want to see it transformed. The algorithms I design are based on the principle that people can overcome their biases when given proper education, exposure, and opportunity." He turns to Victoria. "Ms. Pemberton, I hope you use this experience to become someone who builds bridges instead of walls. The world needs fewer people who attack others for being different, and more people who celebrate what makes us unique." Judge Martinez reviews the sentencing guidelines and the unique circumstances of the case. "Ms. Pemberton, the court sentences you to 18 months in federal prison, suspended pending completion of 1,000 hours of community service focused on bias education and youth mentorship." Victoria's knees nearly buckle with relief. She had prepared herself for years behind bars. Additionally, Judge Martinez continues, "You will pay $100,000 in restitution to Mr. Rivera, though he has requested these funds be donated to the Meridian Rivera Scholarship Fund for underrepresented students in STEM fields." Marcus Rivera addresses the United Nations Technology Ethics Summit at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Center. His presentation, "Building Fairness into the Future." How AI can combat bias instead of amplifying it draws representatives from 89 countries. The Rivera Protocol is now standard in hiring programs across 47 countries, Marcus explains to the Assembly. In its first year of implementation, we've seen a 73% reduction in discriminatory hiring practices and a 340% increase in diverse leadership appointments. In the audience, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the flight attendant from Flight 287, who now directs Meridian Airlines' Diversity and Inclusion program, takes careful notes. The airline industry has been transformed by Marcus's work, with bias detection programs now standard in crew training, passenger service, and corporate operations. But technology alone isn't enough. Marcus continues, "True change requires human beings choosing to see each other's humanity even when, especially when, it's difficult." Victoria Pemberton wipes down tables in the cafeteria of the Roosevelt Youth Development Center in East Atlanta. She's 6 months into her community service requirement, working with kids aged 12 to 18 who are learning coding, robotics, and digital literacy. The irony isn't lost on her. She's serving meals to the same demographic. She once dismissed learning their names, hearing their stories, discovering their dreams. Jamal wants to study aerospace engineering. Keisha is building an app to help homeless veterans find services. Deshawn has been accepted to Georgia Tech on a full scholarship. Ms. Victoria, 14-year-old Aisha, calls out, "Can you help me debug this code?" Victoria looks at the laptop screen displaying lines of Python that would have been incomprehensible to her a year ago. But the coding classes she's been required to attend as part of her rehabilitation have given her basic programming knowledge. Try checking your indentation in line 47, Victoria suggests. Python is very particular about spacing. Aisha makes the correction and her program runs successfully. Thanks, you're getting good at this. Victoria smiles, a genuine expression that would have been impossible during her corporate climbing days. I'm learning that intelligence comes in many forms and it's not always packaged the way you expect. The program director, Maria Santos, observes Victoria's interaction with the students. Over the past 6 months, she's watched a remarkable transformation from bitter defensive ex-convict to genuine mentor and advocate. Victoria Maria says during their weekly check-in, I've received a call from the Rivera Foundation. They're looking for program coordinators for their new bias prevention initiative. The position would involve training corporate executives to recognize and address their unconscious prejudices. Victoria looks up, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in months. They would consider hiring me, after what I did to Marcus. The recommendation came from Marcus himself, Maria explains. He said you've demonstrated the kind of personal transformation the program is designed to create. He thinks your experience, both making the mistake and learning from it, makes you uniquely qualified to help others avoid the same path. Marcus graduates summa cum laude with his master's in AI ethics, but the real celebration is the announcement that his bias detection technology has been adopted by the European Union as mandatory for all member countries' government hiring programs. During his graduation speech, Marcus reflects on the incident that first brought him international attention. 2 years ago, someone judged me unworthy of sharing space with them based solely on my appearance. That attack could have filled me with bitterness, but instead it revealed the urgent need for programs that recognize talent regardless of packaging. In the audience, his mother Elena wipes away tears of pride. Next to her sits an unexpected guest, Victoria Pemberton, now Director of Corporate Bias Prevention for the Rivera Foundation. After the ceremony, Victoria approaches Marcus with characteristic nervousness. Marcus, I wanted to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to turn my worst moment into meaningful work. How are the corporate training sessions going? Marcus asks. Challenging but rewarding. Victoria replies, Last week I trained 200 executives at a Fortune 100 company. When I tell them my story, how prejudice destroyed my career and nearly ruined my life, it gets their attention in a way that textbook diversity training never could. Marcus nods approvingly. The most powerful teachers are often those who've learned the hardest lessons. I have something for you, Victoria says, reaching into her bag. She pulls out a leather-bound journal. I've been documenting every bias prevention session, every conversation with executives who remind me of who I used to be. I want to turn it into a book, learning to see how confronting my own racism saved my soul. Marcus accepts the journal, flipping through pages of careful observations, personal reflections, and professional insights. This could help a lot of people. That's the goal, Victoria says softly. I can't undo what I did to you that night, but maybe I can prevent others from making the same mistake. Marcus Rivera, now 22, and completing his PhD at Oxford, while running a billion-dollar technology company, receives an invitation to speak at Meridian Airlines' annual leadership conference. The venue, Atlanta International Airport, the same terminal where his journey began. Standing at the podium in the first-class lounge where Victoria first confronted him, Marcus addresses an audience of airline executives, government regulators, and bias prevention advocates. 3 years ago, in this very space, someone tried to have me removed because they couldn't believe I belonged here, Marcus begins. Today I'm here to talk about building programs that ensure everyone belongs wherever their talents take them. In the front row sits Victoria Pemberton, notebook open, taking careful notes for her next corporate training session. She's received permission to attend as part of her ongoing education in bias prevention. The Rivera Protocol is now active in 124 countries and has prevented an estimated 2.8 million discriminatory incidents in its first 3 years. Marcus continues. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Behind each prevented incident is a person who was judged fairly. A talent that was recognized, a dream that wasn't crushed by prejudice. During the Q&A, a young black woman in the audience stands up. Mr. Rivera, I'm a pilot with Meridian Airlines. 5 years ago, passengers regularly questioned my qualifications, demanded to speak to the real captain, refused to fly with me. Since your bias detection programs were implemented, those incidents have virtually disappeared. You changed my career, my confidence, my entire life experience. Marcus smiles, but gestures toward Victoria in the front row. Captain Williams, I want you to meet someone who's played an equally important role in that transformation. Victoria Pemberton has trained over 10,000 airline employees in bias recognition and prevention. Her work has been just as crucial as my algorithms. After the presentation, Victoria approaches the young pilot. Captain Williams, I owe you an apology for every incident you experienced before the protocols were in place. People like me created the environment that questioned your competence. Captain Williams extends her hand. Ms. Pemberton, I've heard about your transformation. The fact that you're here doing this work gives me hope that change is really possible. As the conference ends and guests begin to leave, Marcus and Victoria find themselves alone in the first-class lounge, where their lives intersected so dramatically. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asks quietly. Not pressing for harsher punishment, not using your platform to destroy me completely. Marcus considers this carefully. Revenge would have made me feel better for about 5 minutes. Redemption has made the world better for millions of people. I think we chose the right path. Victoria nods, looking around the lounge, where she once felt so entitled, so superior, so certain of who deserved respect and who didn't. I destroyed my life with 8 words, she says. You rebuilt it with 10. Which 10 words? Victoria smiles, reciting the moment that changed everything, Miss Pemberton, you missed some water on your hands. Marcus laughs, remembering offering her a towel in the aftermath of her assault. Those weren't the 10 words I meant. Then which ones? Marcus looks at her seriously. I believe people can change if given the opportunity. They stand in comfortable silence, watching planes taxi toward runways, carrying passengers to destinations around the world. Some of those passengers are traveling in spaces they might not have been welcome in before. Others are succeeding in careers that prejudice might have blocked. Still others are learning to see past their own biases, choosing inclusion over exclusion. The water that Victoria threw in anger has become a river of change flowing through corporate boardrooms, airline training centers, university admissions offices, and human hearts around the world. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with the simplest choice to see another person's humanity, even when it's difficult, even when it challenges everything you thought you knew about who belongs where. The first-class lounge at Atlanta International Airport is quiet now, but the changes that began here echo around the world, one fair decision at a time. 5 years later, the Rivera Protocol prevents an average of 15,000 discrimination incidents per month across global transportation, employment, and education networks. Victoria Pemberton directs the world's largest corporate bias prevention program, having personally trained over 100,000 executives. She kept her promise to learn, and in teaching others found her true calling. Marcus Rivera graduated Oxford with highest honors and became the youngest person ever appointed to the UN Technology Ethics Council. His bias detection algorithms are now standard across Fortune 500 companies worldwide. The water that spilled in anger became the catalyst that transformed how artificial intelligence recognizes human potential. The first-class lounge at Atlanta International Airport displays a simple bronze plaque: "Dignity has no price point. Respect has no seating chart." Below it, a QR code links to bias prevention training that every employee, contractor, and vendor must complete. Every person who enters is reminded that character isn't measured by wealth or appearance, but by how we treat each other. The greatest victory isn't that Marcus Rivera succeeded despite Victoria Pemberton's attack. It's that Victoria Pemberton succeeded because of Marcus Rivera's grace. Sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about transformation. One person, one choice, one moment of humanity at a time. Thank you so much for watching this incredible story of transformation and justice. If this video moved you, please hit that like button to help us reach even more people who need to hear this message. Stories like Marcus and Victoria's remind us that change is possible when we choose compassion over hatred. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss these powerful stories of courage, dignity, and redemption. We're building a community of people who believe in the power of standing up for what's right. Share this video with friends, family, and co-workers. Post it on your social media. Start conversations about bias, dignity, and the courage to change. Because every share helps spread the message that respect and kindness can transform the world. Have you ever witnessed discrimination like this? Have you stood up for someone being treated unfairly? Share your story in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and they inspire others to act with courage. Until next time, remember what Marcus Rivera showed us. True strength isn't about fighting back with anger. It's about responding to hatred with grace and choosing to build bridges instead of walls. Stay strong, stay kind, and never forget that one person's dignity can change everything.